But he went out one day to buy a piano and came back with a harmonica. I don't know who the guy in the music shop was who was like, "Nah, mate, you don't want that. That's like $3,000. Like, what you want is this. This is 20 quid. That's what you want."
This podcast is about you, your journey in music, and we'll talk about the new song you have coming out with Masked Wolf as well.
Cool. Sounds great.
Awesome. And I love your background.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I did this over lockdown with tape. Loads of electrical.
Is that electrical tape?
Yeah. And I just painted one color and then peeled it all off. Yeah.
It looks good.
Yeah. It took a little while. I was real bored in lockdown, so it's actually a soundproof wall. So I made a big gap and then filled it full of rock wall insulation and then built a structure in front of that and then plasterboarded it and then plastered over that. That was like a whole 3-day event, but I can't hear my neighbors anymore, and I assume they can't hear me, which is
That's
good.
Good. That is
super loud.
Probably better for you that you can't hear them.
Yeah, they definitely got a dog at one point, and you can hear it in every other room in the house. So like when they leave the house, it just barks like all day. But in the studio, I'm in my safe zone, so it's all good.
Oh, that's amazing. Awesome. So first off, talk to me about where were you born and raised?
Well, I was born in Scotland, but I moved to the outskirts of Manchester when I was like 3 years old. My parents moved, so I kind of grew up in England, inside a Scottish household. So yeah, a bit of a weird one.
What was it like? Do you remember Scotland? You said you're pretty early when you moved. Young, you mean when you moved to England?
Yeah, I was 3 years old, so
okay.
I don't really remember.
Probably don't remember it too much
when I
about
drive
Scotland.
past the house that we lived in, my parents always like point it out every time we go back to visit family or whatever, and like I feel like I can remember it, but also like I don't know if I actually do. What do you remember at 3 years old? So yeah, but we always visit like a good couple of times a year. I've still got like a lot of family up there, so I make it up to Scotland as much as I can.
Is it far? Like how long does it take you to get there?
I mean, it's quite far from London. It's like probably a 7-8 hour drive from London.
Oh, wow.
You can fly for like, and it's like maybe an hour and a half on a flight. So it's not too bad. Yeah.
Okay. And so you were in London, or where? How far is Manchester then? I'm so bad with geography.
Manchester's like in the middle. So Manchester's like probably like 3.5 hours away.
Oh, so you're just kind of in the center there. Right on.
Yeah.
Well, how did you get into music originally?
My dad, actually, he's such a big fan of music, and like growing up, he just had so many different records and CDs, and he was into everything from like Deadmau5 to Foo Fighters to like The Prodigy to AC/DC, John Mayer. He had real eclectic taste and like loads of different music, and he used to listen to classical music and jazz, and he took me to like loads of concerts when I was growing up. I was his little kind of concert buddy because my mum was not interested in going with him to like anything. So he would always take me, and I absolutely loved it. We've seen like BB King together, Muse, Foo Fighters. We've seen AC/DC 3 times.
Wow.
He's taken me to loads of orchestral concerts, to like jazz gigs, like loads of stuff. So he was such an inspiration. It was really weird because he didn't play an instrument, and I think if he'd have picked one up, he would have really like got to grips with it quickly. But he went out one day to buy a piano and came back with a harmonica. I don't know who the guy in the music shop was who was like, "Nah, mate, you don't want that. That's like $3,000. Like, what you want is this. This is 20 quid. That's what you want."
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, that guy isn't a very good salesman.
No, terrible. So yeah, my dad, he was just a huge influence, and he was really supportive. He bought me my first guitar, and I didn't actually ask for any recording equipment. He would just hear me playing over and over on my guitar in my bedroom, and without me even asking, one day he just came home with this like tiny little 4-track recorder, and he was like, you play an idea one week and next week it's a new idea and you've forgotten the last one, like start recording into this. And so I did, and then I bought a bass off one of my mates at school for like 30 quid. And then I started playing bass because if you can play guitar, you can pretty much like ham it out on bass a little bit. And then I bought a drum kit from a neighbor down the road, and I just started to piece together this like one-man band, because where I lived, no one was a musician really. There was like a couple of musicians in my school, but they lived like really far away. So yeah, my parents were super supportive, and Like like who comes home and gives you a recording device without you asking for it?
Right. Yeah, that's
Learn to do
amazing.
this, you know. So yeah, my dad was just great like that.
That is so cool. And then so you kind of had to build your own one-man band, as you said. So you just try to learn everything so you could record a whole song.
Yeah, so I started learning you know, drums, and this was kind of the early days of like YouTube and stuff, I guess, when it was just coming out, when I was kind of learning. So everything that you needed to learn, you could just pick up, you know, like it was all there for the taking. So I just started learning drums, and then I just sat there until I got good at stuff, you know. I just kept playing drums, kept playing bass. Then eventually I started singing quite late. Like this is probably maybe 3-4 years after I started playing guitar. And of course, the first 3 years I was so bad, like so bad. Like people always think, oh, like you were born with a voice and you've always been able to sing. And like some people, 100% are just born to sing. It was not the case for me. It was like eight long years of graft and hard work to like figure it out. So I just started putting everything together and kind of started sketching out little song ideas. Yeah.
How old are you when you got the guitar?
Oh, my dad bought me my first guitar, I think when I was 12 years old.
Oh, okay.
Because I actually played violin before that, but it was
Oh,
one of
that was
those
the
where I went
first
to like
instrument?
I went to the primary school music open day where they had all the instruments you could try out, and I always wanted to play guitar. But my mum took me to this music open day, and the teacher was like, "No, the guitar is too big for him. He's too small right now. What you want is the violin." And my mom listened to this teacher. So for I mean, honestly, my poor parents, I was just like screeching away awfully on this violin that he couldn't play at like 9 years old. And eventually I was asking for a guitar like every year, every single Christmas. I was like, please, I don't want to play violin. I want to play guitar. I want to be like Angus Young, you know, I want to shred, you know.
Right,
I
of
don't want to
course.
play in like recitals and stuff like that, you know, and quartets. So eventually, like, you know, a couple of years later, my dad, he bought me one for Christmas. And just ever since then, like guitar just made sense to me straight away. Like violin, I thought it was really hard, but something about guitar just clicked with me, you know. Like it's always just made so much more sense than any other instrument. Like I've been trying to learn the piano for like 15 years now, and like I just cannot get my head around that instrument. But guitar just makes sense to me for some reason.
Okay. And then were you writing songs almost immediately, or once you kind of
I
got a
guess
grasp for
I was
playing?
writing instrumentals, you know, before I got like the bass and the drum kit. I was just like, kind of like noodling and like making little loops on this kind of 4-track thing. And then I got like the drum kit, and I had like 2 microphones. So I put one in the kick drum and like one overhead, and like, you know, it sounded real shonky, but I was able to build up these kind of cool tracks, and then got the bass involved, and then it started to sound more like a band. And then I was like, wow, I don't know any singers, so I'm gonna have to start trying to like do some vocals. And then I was like, well, I don't really want to do covers, so I'll start writing original stuff. And yeah, I just started writing like awful songs, years and years of like terrible, terrible songs until, you know, one day they started to come good.
When did you start playing out or showing people your songs? Was that later?
It was later. So when I was 19, I left home and I moved to London. And I started a degree in songwriting at the London Centre of Contemporary Music, which is a university in Borough. And I originally applied for the guitar course, but they were like, "We don't think you're good enough." And I was just like, "Oh
Really?
no!" And I didn't even know there was a songwriters course. I would have actually picked that over the guitar course, but for some reason I just like missed it when I was applying. So they were like, because I'd sent them a few songs that I'd written that had guitar on them, and they were like, "But we really like the songwriting stuff you've sent over. Like, you know, we've got a songwriting course." I was like, "Oh no, right, sweet. Well, I'll do that." And I initially applied, and they were like, "Okay, well, we don't really think your theory's good enough." So I had to do an 8-week theory course, which was like coming down to London once a week on the train to prove that I was going to be good enough to get into this university, because I didn't know any theory whatsoever, like completely self-taught, sitting in my
Oh,
bedroom,
wow. Yeah.
you know, just learning chords from the sound and then trying to replicate it and using tabs and stuff. So um that course was completely useless because I still don't know any theory today.
But you got through it, so they let you into the school.
Yeah. So well, the thing is, I was always, because I'd got like a head start, like at home recording, like there was a whole recording module at the uni, and a lot of people had never done any recording before. So people who couldn't do the recording, I'd be like, okay, cool, you help me out with the theory and I'll do the recording for you. And this became like just swapping work to get, because it was all coursework, so there was not many written exams, so just to get myself through the degree. But I guess it was the first year, I had an amazing teacher called Jez Ashurst, who is a really great songwriter who's in the industry in London, who's written for loads of amazing people over the years. You know, like he's amazing. I didn't really realize like how good a teacher we had, you know, like as a first year to have like an actual songwriter who's in the game, who's doing it for real. And he gave me like amazing feedback. And the only reason I had kind of sang on the songs is, again, because I didn't know any singers. So I didn't really rate myself as a singer. I didn't really think I was a singer. And I didn't really want to be. I thought I was always going to write songs for other people and just kind of hand them off and be like, here you go and do that. And I'll be in the background somewhere. But he really encouraged me. He was like, there's something special about the way that you sing and the tone of your voice. And, you know, there's definitely room for improvement, but I think there's something really special there, like in the making. So he was so great. I actually ended up like the EP that I eventually put out. The lead song on that EP I wrote with him, and it's a song called Blessings. Yeah. And I also wrote that song with my third year tutor. So my first year and my third year tutor, the lead song on my EP I wrote with both of them, and it ended up just like being the kind of catalyst for the whole project, which I think is such a special and amazing thing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've got nothing to say about the second year teacher. He told me I sounded too much like myself and that I needed to try and imitate other people. And I was just like,
really?
What
a terrible advice. That's like the total opposite of what everyone else says. They're like, just be you. Do
You're the worst, man. I got terrible grades. Like, he hated all my stuff.
He's like, have you heard Ed Sheeran? You should sound exactly like him.
Yeah,
he's got stuff going on.
Try all this other music that's popular and try and copy that. I was just like, what?
Oh my! Wow. Were you still in school when you put out the first EP?
No. So basically, that degree was like so good for so many reasons, but mostly because, you know, I met those two amazing songwriters, Jez Ashurst, who's my first year tutor, and Mark Valance, who's my third year tutor. And Mark Valance actually introduced me to my manager that I've got now, and put us in touch. And then I started doing songwriting sessions with my management. I'd never really done much writing for other people. So they put me in a few sessions, but eventually figured like, oh, actually, you know, maybe you do have what it takes to be an artist. Like, everything sounds quite unique, and even when you try and write for other people, it still ends up sounding like you. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a strength. Like, let's try and play to that. So after a year of being with my manager that I'm with now, Simon, there's a kind of like 6 to 9 month gap before I met him, where I was like working every terrible job that I could find in London. Like, I was giving out leaflets for cycling safety for like TfL London, and I was working in like really ropey kitchens and all that kind of thing. But, you know, kind of 9 months after like doing the rounds, I got introduced to this management. We've just built from there, from strength to strength, really. And they've been so monumental in the kind of opportunities they've put in front of me. You know, like Simon put me in touch with, we met a label and then signed to a label, and then a year after that I signed to a publisher, and then just all started snowballing super quickly. And then you look up and it's 6 years later, and here we are about to put out the second album, which is crazy.
That is nuts. Okay, so with that, even on the first EP, do you play everything on all your records?
No, because like I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, really. But like, I always put the guitar down for sure. I have produced like a couple of my early records. Like there was a song called "Fly Away with Me" where I did everything on that. I produced the drums and the bass and all the stuff. It was mixed by somebody else and then mastered. But, you know, I did the core production of it. So there's always like elements of my demos that have gone into the finished product for sure. But like, you know, some of the people I've been getting to work with, like Jim Abyss, for example, who I did my first EP with, it's like he did Arctic Monkeys' first album, he did Adele's first album, he did Kasabian's first album. I'm not going to be like, you know, I'll do everything, mate, don't you worry. He's like, let's get in some proper people. And that's actually how I met my band. You know, I got a couple of great musicians in to play on that EP, and we did it as live as we possibly could, which was so much fun to do with Jim Abyss. You know, I was thrown into the deep end because here's me never really worked with a massive producer, working with like one of the biggest producers. And it's not only that he was big, like I have loved so many albums that he'd done. He'd done like the Sweet Disposition album by the
Oh,
Temper
wow.
Trap.
Yeah, Temper Trap. That's a great record.
And like I love that record. And that first Arctic Monkeys record was one of the reasons I started songwriting, because Alex Turner's lyrics, I could so relate to everything that guy was saying, like getting kicked out of the club and having to swap jumpers with your mates to try and like get back in. Like I felt like when he was singing that stuff, he was singing it to me because I was living that stuff at the time. So to be in with Jim, who'd done all this stuff that I'd grow up listening to, was like an absolute dream. So that was that was such an amazing experience.
Was there a certain song that kind of was the turning point for you? I mean, early on?
I think that first song on the EP, Blessings, like it was one of the most, for me, lyrically, it's still one of my favorite things, because it really captured like that section of my life. Like, it's like, are we going out tonight? We could go to yours, or you could come to mine. Got no money for the pub, no, but I can probably scrape enough for the bus though. You know what I mean? It was all like, I was absolutely flat broke, working crappy jobs. I just signed my record deal, but the money still hadn't come through. So I'd like stopped work, and they were like, okay, we need you to do this full time. And I'm like, but you've still not paid me like the advance. I have no money. Like I can't just stop. Like I know that you're a big like label and stuff, but like if you want me to stop working,
like, I gotta eat and live.
Money. right. Gladly, I'll gladly stop. So I wrote that song, just as I was kind of getting signed, and everything was so exciting, but I was still living this life with my mates, living in a house with 7 people who were all chipping into the rent, who were all like young and hungry people trying to get to grips with like climbing up the ladder in whatever area they were working in London. So it was such an exciting house to be in. Like one of the guys I was living with at the time, who's working at like a popular supermarket called Iceland, and then he ended up like working with the UK government like years later, and it was just like we were all really like getting after like our dreams in that house, and it was such an inspirational place to be. But still, we couldn't afford to go to the pub on Friday night, so we just stayed in, bought loads of like cheap beer, and kind of got hammered and listened to Spotify and had a great time. So yeah.
That's awesome. You have obviously a huge song with Leave a Light On within that record as well. I mean, just went platinum. That's so amazing. Congratulations on that. I mean, were you playing a whole lot of shows before you released that second record, or the first debut record, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the moment I released the EP, so I think there was probably like 4 years apart from the EP to actually finishing the album, or at least that starting to make the EP to the finished product, which was the What a Time to Be Alive, my debut album. I felt like it started off with a few shows, but it just every year just kept climbing and climbing and climbing. I think like the year before the pandemic, it was like 135 shows in a year. And we've been like Japan, Australia, like we've been to America. We've like just been everywhere. And it was stuff like going to New Zealand for 2 days. And I'm like, who does that? Who goes all the way to New Zealand from the UK for like 2 days? And then, all this crazy stuff that you never thought that you would end up doing. So it started off real small, but what I really liked about it is it built so gradually. So it was kind of like, it was easy to keep up with the pace it was progressing. Like I don't feel like I went from naught to like number one album. It really was like a gradual build with a lot of work, and the work kept increasing. So, it was only towards the end where I was like, oh my God, some of these weeks are starting to get a bit intense. I've not had a day off for like 21 days, and like I don't know where I am. I've not slept and all that, but it's all kind of part of the process. I think when you're doing your debut album, there's a lot of roadblocks in the way, and you kind of have to do everything humanly possible to kind of reap the rewards. And then after that first album, you think, well, that's it now, plain sailing. And it's like, no. Like the difficult second album, get to work on that.
Right. Yeah. So, the follow-up.
Yeah. Which I've been trying to follow up in like a pandemic. So what do you write about when you're stuck at home for 18 months other than not want to be stuck at home?
Right.
So that was definitely a bit of a challenge, but the last 6 months have been great, man. Like I've just been to a big trip to America. I went to Nashville for 10 days and then went to LA after that. And
that's awesome. That's where I'm at, in Nashville, but I'm originally from in San Diego, close enough to LA, but yeah, that's cool that you're here.
I love
Awesome.
Nashville, man. It was one of my favorite places I've ever been, like for sure. Like I'd been there once before for again like 2 days, and one of those days I was in a studio, so I didn't really get out and about. I was just working on something to finish the album. The
Mhm.
other day was promo, so I didn't really see any of Nashville. But this time I really got to grips with the city, and there was like I can't remember the name of it, but there was a gig in the park. I can't remember the name of it. Musician's Corner. That
Oh
was it.
yeah,
Yeah, and I got to just sit in the middle of that and watch like 4 amazing bands play for free in the middle of the city on this beautiful day. They were
that's
selling
cool.
beers and hot dogs and all this amazing stuff. And I was just thinking, what a great city. Because you do have stuff like that in London, but I
Mhm.
feel like in Nashville, it felt like that was more of an everyday thing. You know, there was just music everywhere. Like even the guy, as I was leaving Nashville, even the guy who was playing in like the airport bar was one like who no one was listening to, was one of the best guitarists I've ever heard in my
Oh,
life. I was walking
it's
past just like,
crazy.
this guy's insane. Do you know what I mean? Like, and every session I was doing, I was bringing my guitar, I was taking it out of the case, and then like all these amazing people would be like, maybe the chords could be like this, and I'll just be like, I'll just put this away. I'll just
Let me open the case.
yeah. Well, I won't need that today.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I remember getting off the airplane the first time I came here too, and it's like we flew Southwest, and it was like there's some restaurant bar type thing right when you got out of your plane, and this guy was playing, and I was just like, whoa, like this dude's playing in the airport bar, and
Yeah,
he was like incredible.
in it,
It's just
it's nuts.
it's wild.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious. How quickly did you see Leave a Light On really start to blow up? Was it pretty quick, or was it
No,
like you said, a slower
it
pace?
actually it took us a year to get that record going, and a lot of people don't think that because all they see is the finished thing where they're like,
Right.
"Look how many streams that song's has." It's like that's
Right.
happened overnight, and I'm like, "Well, no, actually, it took a whole year." So it was really strange. We put it out in the UK and it got into the top 40, which was great. But then it
Mhm.
kind of just fizzled out a bit, and I was like, "Oh well, that's that happens sometimes." Like on to the next thing. But then it starts like moving in Italy, and it's climbing up the chart really quickly. And then it gets into like the top 10. And then they were like, right, we need you to come to Italy, do a couple of gigs, do a couple of performances. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. Let's get out to Italy. So all of a sudden, I'm like doing all these radio interviews. Like nobody's known about me in Italy until this point at all. Like I'm completely off the radar. No one's ever heard my name. And all of a sudden, I'm in all these radio stations doing promo for it. And then, we did that for a bit and it kept building and building. We came back to the UK, got on with writing the rest of our album. And then it went from Italy to Germany. And then it started building in Germany. And this is like 3 months later. And then it really started climbing up the charts there. And then because it was like, okay, there's 2 countries in Europe, the rest of Europe are like, who's this guy? What's going on here? So then France get on board and it was a #1 airplay record in France, which is like super difficult to achieve because on French radio, it's got to be a certain amount of French artists who are like the priority, which I think is awesome.
Oh,
Obviously to keep the culture
yeah.
and French music super popular, which is great. So, but it means it's harder from people from other places to kind of break
To
through.
break
So the
through,
fact that it was
right.
like a #1 airplay there for like I think it was like 6 weeks or something, which is crazy.
Wow.
And then from there, it kind of did a number of other places in Europe, and then it came back to the UK, and this is literally a year later. And then it got into the top 10 in the UK, and I think it peaked at like #7, and it was
Wow.
just really blowing up at this point. So it takes a lot of work to get these things moving, and it doesn't always happen overnight. I've always found with my music, it's a bit of a slow burner, like
Mhm.
it takes a little while to lift off, but then when it does it takes a long time to get going, but once it gets going, it's going for
A
ages. So you kind
while.
of like, oh god, it's a year and a half later, and we're still talking about this song. Like, I've written so many songs since then. I'd love
Right.
to talk about like anything else, but it's like, oh, but the song only just got to Australia, so we really want like, what's the meaning behind it? And I'm thinking, I've been telling people for a year and a half
2
now
years
the
what
meaning
this
of
song's
song is.
about. Oh, wow.
Problems I have for sure.
Well, you scored you won British Breakthrough Artist in 2019, like right before the pandemic hit. Like, that must have been obviously a huge moment for you to win that.
Yeah, absolutely. That was crazy. That particular Brit as well. it was a public vote. So like we had gone to Scotland because I'm from Scotland, and like I think a lot of UK artists are like, I'll just stay in London and I'll play things around London and I will win a public vote. And I was just kind of like, me and the team were like, why don't we do something different? Like, let's go up to Scotland. Let's put on like a free gig outside. So in Suckyhall Street, which is like the main street in Glasgow, and at the end of it, these really grand steps, we were like, let's just put on like a little 3-4 song concert, like in the street, like let's bust. And we got a bunch of bagpipers called the Red Hot Chili Pipers to come.
I've heard of this band.
And play it.
Yeah, I know who that band is. That's awesome.
Yeah, so they came along and they did like the little synth line that's in Leave a Light On. They played it on the bagpipes.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they came on like from behind, almost like a kind of what do you call it when like people just start coming out of nowhere? A flash mob. It was almost like that. Like, the bagpipe was just started walking up the stairs, playing it in the first chorus, and everyone was like, "Whoa, Scotland!" You know what I mean? They're all wearing tartan and kilts, and it was it was an amazing moment. And then we did a bunch of other promo around Scotland. I was basically just said to the Scottish people, like, look, I'm up for a BRIT. It's a public vote. If you could vote for us, that'd be class. Like, no worries if not. And I'll be honest with you, when we got to the Brits that night, my label had already been like, listen, mate, we don't think we're gonna get this tonight. So just to soften the blow, like, you know, you did good and like we've smashed it this year, like, but you're probably not going to pick this up. It's probably going to go to Mabel. And I was like, yeah, I kind of thought that anyway. Like, whatever, no worries. I'll just sit here drinking free beer. So I was like 5 beers down at this point with a free bar on the table, just like, well, if I'm not going to win, I'm going to fully take advantage of the free alcohol.
I'm going to drink all this beer.
And it gets to the category and I'm like, right, okay, you know, practice your happy face for when you lose kind of thing. And then they call out my name and I was literally at the table, right, just sitting there swigging a beer. And I noticed this cameraman walking over, but then he disappears. And I'm like, where's he gone? And then just before they announce, he kind of like pops up. So he's like this. He's just like, he just pops up like this with the camera in my face. I'm like, where's this guy come from? And then I just hear the award goes to Tom Walker. And I had literally prepared nothing, no speech, no anything, just completely wing the whole thing. Which was quite nice. I think it was, you know, at least a genuine reaction.
Right.
I like thanked my grandmother in the speech. You know what I mean? I was like just thanking everybody I could think of. So, yeah, but no, it was a huge moment, man. It was great.
That's so cool. And then from there, though, I mean, were you touring? Like, where were you when in March 2020 rolls around?
So we just finished a tour of Scotland where I had an idea of doing like a run of, I think it was like 8 really intimate gigs around Scotland. In places that artists wouldn't usually go to, you know what I mean? Like the real kind of rural places, but that have like sick little independent venues. So we did a bunch of that, and I took a string quartet with me, and it was just like it was the 4 of them on strings, the piano player and me, and we just wanted to do something different. So we literally finished that the end of February, and then me and my missus had been living with flatmates for like 8 years. I mean, we've been together like 8 years, and the whole time we'd never lived together, just the 2 of us. So I was like, well, our flatmates were like, look, we're going to move out and we're going to get our own place. And we were like, oh, right, okay, well, I guess we're going to have to do the same. And I was like, I think it's time. Like, we've been saving for ages now. Should we try and buy a house? So 7 days before a global pandemic kicked in and all my gigs got cancelled, I decided to buy a house. So we bought our first place. And then I was actually thinking at the time, like, oh my God, like, I've never lived with just my partner. Like, it's never happened before. Like, what if we hate each other? Like, what's going to happen here? We can't invite anybody around. But actually, it was so beautiful because I just spent, you know, the best part of 5 years away on the road touring. And finally to get back in our own space, and like where it was just the 2 of us, we had a little garden for the first time, which was like amazing. So yeah, we were super lucky, man. You know, spending that together and getting that time, and it was a little silver lining through a really like difficult time. I know it sucked so hard for a lot of people, but me and my missus, like, we got a nice little bit of time together, which was really cool.
That is awesome. How quickly do you start writing this new record?
I mean, I'm always kind of writing. I did take a little break at the start of it. The first 3 months, my manager was like, we need to do Zoom sessions. We need to do this. We cannot fall behind. You'll get left behind in a second, Tom. We need to be doing this and this and this. And he's at home, like, and I can tell, like, oh my God, this guy's got too much time on his hands for the first time in like 5 years. And he doesn't know how to chill. And I'm just like, can't we just chill for a bit, man? Like, I feel like the last 5 years has been fairly hectic. Like, can we not just take this opportunity to just like ramp things down a little bit? And he's like, no, you've got to stay on top of the ball and keep writing. I immediately started doing like Zoom sessions, which, as it turned out, like the song I'm about to release tomorrow, it comes out. Something Beautiful. It was one of my first ever Zoom sessions, and it was a Zoom session with Steve Mack, who I wrote Leave a Light on with. And it's so funny because the first session that we ever had together, we wrote Leave a Light on, and then we were trying to like, which is mad because we were trying to replicate that song, but as it went so big, it was quite difficult. Like, that was the first 5 hours we ever spent together in a room. We wrote that song, and it's
crazy.
Yeah, I know, it's nuts. So then, like, the first Zoom session I did was with him, and we did the next single that's coming out now. I just think there's something really magic in that, and we got Mass Wolf to jump on it a couple of months later, because I'd initially done, I think I counted the other day, I'd done 14 A4 pages worth of verse lyrics to try and get the verse, and I just couldn't get it. I tried so many different melodies and so many different options, and it just wasn't connecting for some reason. I just couldn't get it, and they weren't like bad verses, but they just weren't amazing. And we had this idea of sending it to Mass Wolf because I loved his tune Astronaut in the Ocean. I thought it was such a banger.
Yeah,
and he's just got such great swag. Like, his new album, which came out a couple of months ago, I listened to it like 3 times through the other day, and there's some absolute bangers on there. The guy's real talented, and I just love his lyrics and his flow and everything. So we asked him to get on it, and I was thinking, I wonder if he's actually going to do it. Literally a day later, he sent back like the first version. And I was thinking, there'll probably be bits that I'm not too sure about, whatever. No, didn't change a thing. Didn't even change what he'd sent. Didn't ask him to revocal it or anything. I was just like, that's it. That's what I'm waiting for. So it was great and a relief, because I've been working on the song for such a long time, and I knew there was something special to like the chorus and the pre and the middle eight that we had, the bridge, should I say, in American. And we just needed that like little lift on the verses, and he really got into the meaning of the song, and he just absolutely nailed it. So yeah, I'm super buzzing for that to come out. It was a long road to get there, but we finally made it.
That's awesome, and that's rad that you were able to get him to do it, and it came back. Sounds like it was pretty quick and easy to work with them.
You know, it's like me and Steve wrote Something Beautiful, like the original version. We wrote it in 3 hours, I think, 3.5 hours on Zoom, and then that was it. It was like we were done. And then I just kept trying to write the verses and went in with him, and then I went in with a few other writers, like trying to finish it. But I spent hours and hours on it, and it just never clicked. And I honestly think sometimes there's that fresh perspective of when you first get in the room with something and you're running with something really new and exciting. It's really important to try and like capture it in that moment, because you're in a state of like flow, you know, like everything's brand new and it sounds great and like you're fully in love with it. But when you live with it for like then another 10 days trying to like write the same verse, it becomes like a fatiguing kind of program. It becomes like I don't know, just it's hard to live with it and keep living with it and making it sound exciting. And I don't know, it's just, you can't make progress with it. So I think that was the thing with Mass Wolf. He'd heard it for the first time. We'd taken the verses off. I didn't even send him what we had. I was like, this is the blank verse, like you do your thing. This is where I want my bit to start. It's the pre-chorus onwards. And then you've got verse 1 and 2, do your thing. And I think him hearing it for the first time, he just like obviously just got in the zone and laid it all down. And I'm a big believer in that, because sometimes the best songs you ever write, you write them super quickly and it happens in like 5 hours and you don't go back. And I find the ones that you go back and amend like 45 times are the ones you've overthought and probably aren't going to do as well as you thought. You know, you're like, it's a masterpiece. I've spent 45 hours on it, but actually it's crap.
Well, I can't wait to hear it. It comes out, you said tomorrow?
Yeah, it comes out. So it's Thursday night at 12 p.m. I think it comes out.
That is amazing. And it's going to be part of your second record?
Yeah, so it's part of the second record, which I'm still working on. I was going to say the title, but it's kind of a working title, so I'm not even going to go there.
No worries.
But yeah, I think we're probably about 70% of the way through. I'm going to keep writing until the very end, because now that we've got like a couple of the singles, the label are really happy with it.
Mhm.
It takes the pressure off for me to just like really kind of experiment and just do crazy wacky stuff. And I always find that like when the pressure's off a little bit, you start to be more creative and just go outside of the box. And sometimes that really fuels the fire in a way you weren't expecting. So it's exciting times, man.
I can't wait to hear it. And thank you so much, Tom, for doing this, man. I really appreciate your time.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it as well.
Yeah, I have one more question for you. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Advice. I think find something that you really love and that I don't know. It's hard to say. I think I've got a kind of thing where you really do have to put like 10,000 hours in. Like I put so much time into this. I've been like recording music in my bedroom since I was like literally at like 12 years old. And it's only when I got to kind of 25, 26 where things started to happen. And honestly, I was this close to like giving up on the dream because I was doing crappy jobs that I hated to make time for the music. I was like not making enough money to like do anything other than be at home and make music in my spare time. And it was this all-encompassing thing. And it was really getting me down. But like that's just the journey of music. Even when you make it to a certain level, there's still like up and down, and it's a roller coaster. But there's never, ever a dull day. It's such a rewarding and frustrating job simultaneously. But, you know, it really satisfies me. And I absolutely adore what I'm doing. And I would say, if there's young people out there who absolutely love it and they're really hungry for it, just put as much time and as much effort and learn and collaborate with people. Don't try and do everything on your own because it's impossible. Go and write songs with other people. Go and collaborate with producers. Go and work with artists that you never thought that you would work with. Reach out to people. Like, just get in amongst it because that's the only way to get it done.